Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Leo Zagami show. After the great success we had last week with exploring the Illuminati Occult part 37, we are here with part 38, Temple Mount, the Fair Temple and the End of Days. Yes, last week our report got right to the top of the InfoWars reports, and I think that's a good sign because we try to bring some clarity on some very difficult subjects. And today we're going to try to bring even further clarity, more clarity. I'm Leo Zagami. She's Christy Zagami.
Hi, everyone.
This is the Leo Zagami show that is possible only thanks to our sponsors.
Okay, so the sponsors today are Philippe Beller, and Richard Robinson and Bruce Kodish. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your donations. We really are grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are very grateful, and I would also like to thank Pina, my friend Pina. She's always a great supporter, though she prefers, I think, the Italian show.
Yeah.
But in any case, here we are. And this is a very important show, guys. So let's start. Let's start with the dance macabre.
Who's here? Hi, Katie. My friends.
We have the chat open, of course, for those who are following us live. We are broadcasting at the moment on Facebook, YouTube, and we will be broadcasting in the coming hours also on Band.video. We also...
They like this part, so you have to really dance and love.
Okay, I would like to address the chat here. Just stay on point, stay on topic. Don't flood the chat with very long messages. Otherwise, we will be forced to block you. Just a little bit of, giving the rules here, the rules to follow as we try to get the possibility for everybody to intervene so nobody can take over the chat. Huh?
Yeah, we don't want that.
Rambo will join us at the end of the show. What is he doing now? He's sleeping. He's sleeping. Oh. Okay, so the subject of today, a very controversial subject, a subject we need to discuss and to explain, because this subject, as you will discover today, is really at the center of today's Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The controversial building of the Fair Temple is actually right at the roots of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and what is happening today in Gaza. Gaza, by the way, it's a very particular piece of land. The Knights Templars used to have their castle there. Then you had Nathan of Gaza, who was the prophet of Shabbatai Zevi, of the Sabbatean heresy, who once they got kicked out of Jerusalem, decided that Gaza was the holy place. And in antiquity, the inhabitants of Gaza were apparently the descendants of the Anunnaki, so they were deemed a little bit dangerous and not to get too close to. But in any case, here we are talking about a subject that is fundamental for the Illuminati, for the Freemasons, because the allegory of the Temple of Solomon is right at the basis of one of the most important allegories and one of the most important symbols that the Freemasons also learns in his own journey. Now, of course, it's been said that there's a lot of misunderstanding, that in reality it's only an allegory, a symbol, but there is something more to it. So here we go with today's show. Discussing the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is, of course, the focus of ongoing biblical history and prophecy, but also never-ending controversy. It's never ending among Muslims and Jews. This is the center of the world for the Abrahamic religions, where Abraham offered his son, Isaac, and King David purchased the land so his son Solomon could then build the first temple, this magnificent first temple. But it's also the place that marks the first controversy, because, when it comes down also to Isaac being brought as a sacrifice to God, of course, then God refuses in the end, but there is this offering. The Muslims think that it's Ishmael who was prepared to be sacrificed and not Isaac. Then we have Ismail, of course, who is regarded as the ancestor of Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. The second temple is where Jesus cleansed the temple, and a poor widow gave an offering of 2 copper coins, which Jesus said were far greater in significance than all the extravagant donations he had been given. In Jesus' prophetic briefing, known as the Olivet Discourse, he said that Jerusalem will be in the hands once again of the Jewish people, and thus Jerusalem will be the central focus of upheavals. Mm-hmm. Upheavals. Okay. Yes. Jesus prophesied in Luke 21:24 that Jerusalem will be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So the sign of all signs, which has not been present in any generation until now, is the re-emergence of the state of Israel. In 1948, we have, of course, touched on this subject last week, and for those who have not viewed that video, please go and check it out, because it's a very important episode that has brought much clarity and has been very much appreciated, and we're glad about that. The Bible said the Jews will return, and they did after nearly 2,000 years, 1,900 years, return to their homeland. And this has never happened before in history, but of course with a lot of controversy that goes along with it, because in the meantime there is also a quite large Arab population that calls itself the Palestinians, but that's a little bit of a controversy here, because Palestine never really existed. There was, of course, let's say, a region deemed as Palestine within then the various borders that were ever changing. There was first the Ottoman Empire, then, of course, it became a British protectorate. And in 1947, you can still see this map that was proposed for 2 states by the United Nations, but nothing really came from it. In May of this year, this gentleman called Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is an Israeli lawyer and politician who serves as the Minister of National Security, visited the Temple Mount, creating a lot of controversy, saying, "I'm happy to go up to the Temple Mount, the most important place for the people of Israel. It should be said that the police are doing a wonderful job," he said. I'm quoting him, of course, and once again proving who is in charge in Jerusalem. And then he also added, "All of Hamas threats will not change anything. We are in charge of Jerusalem and the entire land of Israel." Let's go and check this gentleman, because I have a couple of videos where we can see his visit also, more than one, to the Temple Mount. And it's very important to understand what is really happening there. So here we go. Ben-Gvir, very important member of Benjamin Netanyahu's government.
In principle, there's nothing wrong here. Itamar Ben-Gvir, just like every other Jewish person, is allowed to ascend to Jerusalem's Temple Mount so long as he's there as part of an organized group and does not pray there. But is it the right thing to do when you're the Minister of National Security? And the Temple Mount, holy to both Muslims and Jews, is one of the most sensitive places in the Middle East and a flashpoint for tensions. That, of course, depends on who you ask.
I'm happy to be here on the Temple Mount, the most important place for the people of Israel. And all the policemen and our fighters here are doing a fantastic job.
While Ben-Gvir and his supporters in the Israeli right wing are happy to see him there, for the second time since he took office, countries in the region, including those who maintain ties with Israel, strongly criticize the visit. Jordan is a custodian of the holy Muslim places in Jerusalem, and shortly after the visit, its foreign ministry issued a statement saying it condemned in the strongest terms what Jordan calls, quote, the storming of the compound by Ben-Gvir under the guard and protection of the Israeli occupation forces, a similar statement also coming from the Egyptian foreign ministry. All this comes after a weekend marked by clashes between Jews and Arabs in the old city of Jerusalem, following a nationalist Israeli parade on Jerusalem Day last Thursday. There are also constant threats by Hamas that any action in the Temple Mount will carry a heavy price. Ben-Gvir was not impressed.
So every time there is always Hamas threatening, and then in the end, on Yom Kippur, they actually move forward with their threats, and they suddenly killed many Jews, and this started, of course, a new cycle, a new Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
We have proven once again who are the owners of Jerusalem, and all the threats by Hamas will not help. We are the owners of Jerusalem and the entire land of Israel.
The tense, holy month of Ramadan may be over, so are the sensitive days that followed, but tensions in this area do not really need any specific reason to make themselves felt again.
Okay, so here we are to discuss this subject, and we continue introducing this subject to our viewers. It's a very delicate subject. You see, there is a lot of, it's like the most sensitive part of the Middle East. And of course, very much connected with what is going on. And now you will understand also why. Because the Palestinian Authority, of course, at the time, Nabil Abu Rudeneh called the visit of this minister a flagrant attack on Al-Aqsa, warning that it will have serious repercussions, according to the Palestinian Wafa news agency. This was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly stressed, however, in a very diplomatic way, that Israel is acting to maintain the status quo on the Temple Mount. But what is this status quo? Israel is committed to maintaining freedom of worship, says Netanyahu, free access for all faiths, and the status quo on the Temple Mount, and will not allow violent extremists to change this. This is what Netanyahu said back in April of this year. However, 1 year earlier, in May 2022, clashes broke out as nearly 1,000 Jews visited the Temple Mount on Independence Day. Dozens of Palestinian rioters threw stones and other items at police officers who were securing the group visits to the Temple Mount, many also injuring one. At the time, Hamas, as usual, had to say something. Hamas, in a situation like this, Hamas. But, you know, what did he say? Abdel Latif Al-Fnau warned that if Jews were allowed to enter the site, it would be a detonator for a new confrontation. So, once again, we see how important, how central to what is happening today this whole place is, this holy sanctuary. He called on Arabs and Palestinians to arrive at the Temple Mount to confront Jewish visitors, like also this happened also other times. Hamas warned that Israel was playing with fire, though, this time, in dragging the region into an escalation for which the occupation bears full responsibility. This was May 2022. I want to just show you what happens when somebody, Bruce says, it wasn't Yom Kippur, it was Sukkot. Oh, okay. So, regarding the actual clashes, they are quite, they happen quite on a regular basis. Sometimes, of course, they are worse than others, especially when the Jews are permitted or try to do something they shouldn't do, which is praying there, which in theory shouldn't be permitted.
With two different holidays on the same day, these clashes could have been expected from miles away. Even though the police has prepared for them, it seems they were inevitable. After the morning prayers on Temple Mount were over, the Israeli police decided to allow some Jewish visitors to enter the site. Shortly after, the clash has begun. The Red Cross has reported 61 Palestinians and 4 Israeli policemen were injured. The violence was barely kept away from the rest of Jerusalem in this tense day. Some worshippers have expressed their frustration and called for a calm.
Never look at the people who are causing a fuss. There were 80,000 Muslims this morning, but only 1,000 of them were troublemakers. So why are you saying there was a mess there? I'm telling you that most of the world wants peace, and we will take care of bringing peace.
Others were less moderate.
With God's help, we hope. We are calling from here to the Prime Minister to let us build the temple already. How long must we be in mourning? How long?
This is our mosque. You don't have a place here. This is our mosque, and you are forbidden to enter our mosque. It's even forbidden for you to pray in the gates. We won't allow you to enter, and we won't allow you to pray in the gates.
And so, more tension. Yes, Bruce, who is obviously Jewish, noticed my mistake when I said that what happened on October the 7th was actually on the day of Shemini Atzeret, which is the day after Sukkot, and which is combined in Israel with a separate holiday. So it's kind of like a partaking in the Sukkah. So it's a special day that unfortunately was very much ruined by the events that took place this year. But let's move forward to explain more about this controversy. Christian, we try to explain to people how these controversies started, because by knowing how they start, then you can make your mind up. Now, since 1967, Jordan and Israel agreed that what is known as the WAQF, the Islamic Trust, basically, the Waqf, will have control over matters inside the compound, the Temple Mount, while Israel will control external security. Non-Muslims will be allowed onto the site during visiting hours, but will not be allowed to pray there. So they can visit, but they can't show their act of worship, their prayer. In the year 2000, Israeli politician Ariel Sharon entered the holy site accompanied by 1,000 Israeli policemen, deliberately reiterating Israel's claim to the contested area, considering the then Prime Minister Ehud Barak brokered just then a peace negotiation with the Palestinian leader who was still alive, Yasser Arafat. These, of course, always, are the follow-up to that Oslo Accord that for many people has not produced anything positive in the end. Now, Sharon's entrance to the compound unleashed that time what is known as the Second Intifada, in which more than 3,000 Palestinians and some 1,000 Israelis were killed. So, he entered, but then there was unfortunately this killings, which unfortunately happen when the tensions get high in that part of the world. In May 2017, the Israeli cabinet held its weekly meeting in tunnels below the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the 50th anniversary of the Israeli occupation of East Jerusalem, to mark the liberation and unification of Jerusalem, a move that infuriated, of course, the Palestinians. Now, there is all these caves, this underground part, that is actually under the Temple Mount, in which some say maybe there is hidden even the Ark of the Covenant. I know that they also the Sabbatean Frankists did some satanic masses in this underground caves. I was invited to some kind of event organized back in 2005, 4, I think, by members of the Monte Carlo Lodge who were connected to the Mossad. And there was also invited this Italian high priestess, which wasn't really a high priestess. It was a man who turned out to be a woman who was born with both sexes, and he actually was a priest, and then changed. At one point, he decided to give up on one of his sexes, and he became a woman, and he became actually very known occultist, Michela Mercenaro. So something weird goes on under there in those. Okay. Now, though, there is, since the 80s, we have temple movements that want to rebuild the temple. They want to bring back the temple. One of them is the Temple Institute. Then we have the self-proclaimed Temple Mount Administration and the Temple Mount and Eretz Yisrael movement. Each of these movements say that their goal is to build a third temple on the Temple Mount, which is Mount Moriah. This is a very important place, of course. At one point, when the Crusaders were in the Holy Land, the Knights Templars made their headquarters there on the Temple Mount. And it says that some say that during the stay of the Knights Templars, they were digging to find the Ark of the Covenant, and they eventually find it, and they moved it somewhere else. I've been talking about this in Invisible Master. Now, the Temple Institute, it's a very controversial organization. It's a controversial organization known in Hebrew as Makon Akmikdash. They also built this incredible golden menorah, which is something I want to show you. It's like made out of tons of gold, and it's a quite incredible site. So let's check it out, and then let's talk also about the red five.
Heifer. Cow.
Holy cow. So this is the golden menorah, a light to the nations, that has been put together for the temple, the future temple, the third temple, but at the moment is simply in display. Here we are. So this is quite half a ton of gold, incredible, and built, of course, for, their goal is to build a fair temple. Now, the Temple Institute has made several items. We have just seen one of them, but they have also prepared these red heifers, whose ashes are required, according to passages in Numbers, to purify the temple's priests, who are who are supposed to attend the ritual in the Holy of Holies in the fair temple, which I call them heifers, arrived from Texas in September 2022. And as the Temple Institute is continuing the preparation to lay the ground for the construction of the fair temple of Jerusalem. Let's see their arrival from Texas to Jerusalem. Welcome to the Leo Zagami show. Today we are discussing the extremely perilous, controversial subject of the fair temple, but also the Temple Mount. We will be discussing soon also both the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, to understand also certain misconceptions that we might have. It's important because this is, of course, a key place, has a key role in the end days, and especially in the coming back of the Messiah, of Jesus. Now, this will be understood, of course, more when, further on in the show. But let's check out what happens with these happy red cows that arrived from Texas. So I don't know if the cows will be so happy if they know how they're going to end up. Of course, what happens is all to prepare the purification stage, the purification ritual. It's a very complex thing what will go on in this fair temple. The term fair temple, of course, we had the first temple, we had the second temple. If you want to know briefly what the first and second temple were, well, we can discuss that. Most of all, now we have to focus on the third temple, because things really changed also for Judaism from the destruction of the second temple in the year 70 after Christ, of the Common Era, when basically the clash between the Romans and the Hebrews and the Jews became so harsh that the Romans basically destroyed the second temple, and from that moment onwards, there is always been this will from the Orthodox side of Judaism to rebuild this temple. That would be, of course, the fair temple. But it's also the moment in which Judaism became rabbinic Judaism. It's the moment in which we have also the birth of what is known as the Mishnah. So, which basically, for those who, of course, don't know what the Mishnah is the first major written collection of the Jewish oral traditions, known also as the Oral Torah. Now, moving forward with what we are discussing, it's, like I said, a very particular subject, a subject also that we need to discuss with a lot of respect for all the parts involved. Now, prayer it's of course a formal part of the Jewish tradition, and although it remains unbuilt, like I said, the desire of a fair temple is sacred to Judaism, particularly to Orthodox Judaism, and that is trying in some way to rebuild it. But of course, then there will be also those who will manipulate all this, that will use it to their advantage. We have seen last week, in the episode of last week, how evangelic Christianity somehow was also involved with inspiring some of the tenets of Zionism, and also inspiring, the fact that to go back to Israel, rebuild, and in the end also rebuild the temple, because that is also part of the whole project. Now, in the past, there were, after the destruction of the temple during the Roman times, there were some emperors that tried to. There was Emperor Hadrian, who granted permission to rebuild the temple, but then changed suddenly his mind. Hadrian was the guy who built the Villa Adriana down the Tivoli. It was a little bit, of course.
It's beautiful.
Very nice place, maybe, but he changed his mind. Then there was another aborted project under the Emperor Julian, who lived basically a long time after, at that point there was quite a long time after the destruction of the temple, but he wanted to rebuild this temple, and he actually tried to rebuild the temple. But what happened here? Now, he's usually called Julian the Apostate due to his policy of reversing the Christian Emperor Christian Constantine Christianization of the empire. He wanted to restore all the traditional religions and practices all over the empire, and so he said to the Jews, I will help you building it. And in the Roman history of Ammianus Marcellinus, it says Julian fought to rebuild at an extravagant expense the proud temple once at Jerusalem, and committed this task to Alypius of Antioch. Alypius set vigorously to work, but then something happened here. Something happened because, he was seconded by the governor of the province, everything was fine, but then fearful balls of fire breaking out of nowhere near the foundation continued, these balls of fire started to attack the workmen, and after repeated scorchings, they gave up. Now, this failure to rebuild the temple by Emperor Julian has been interpreted in various ways, but the one that I agree more to is what the Christian historians of the time thought, that there was divine intervention. Some says that maybe there was some ambivalence from the Jewish. In fact, there was a Rabbi Ilkia, who was one of the leading rabbis of the time, who spent Julian's money arguing that Gentiles should not pay in the rebuilding of their own temple, because they thought, the Jews should pay for it, not somebody else, not a Roman emperor, not anybody. So sabotage is indicated as a possibility, but, as also maybe accidental fire, but divine intervention is what Christian historians say, and that's what I ascribe to personally. Now, here is where the Muslims come in. So at this point, they didn't manage to reconstruct the temple. The Jewish people were basically, after they confronted the Roman Empire, they were also 60 years after the destruction of the temple, some revolts that really pissed off the Romans, and so at that point the Romans they kicked out basically the Jews out of Jerusalem, and at one point they will not even permit them back in. However, an Armenian chronicle from the 7th century of the Common Era, written by a bishop called Sebeos, states that the Jews and Arabs, at that point, you have the Arabs, you have the Muslims that arrived, were quarreling about the differences of religion during the siege of Jerusalem in 637 of the Common Era. But a man of the sons of Ishmael named Muhammad gave a sermon on the way of truth, supposedly at God's command, inviting both the Jews and the Arabs to unite under the banner of their father Abraham and enter the Holy Land. Let's remember that the Byzantine, the Christians were actually more, at that point, considered a bigger enemy than the Muslims from the Jews, because of the way they have been treated from the Roman Empire, and the Byzantine was considered the continuation of the Roman Empire, even if the capital had moved from Rome to Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. Now, Sebeos also reports that the Jews began a reconstruction of the temple in that occasion, but the Arabs expelled them and repurposed the place for their own prayers. That's when the two monumental structures that we see today were built during the Rashidun and early Umayyad caliphates after the city's capture in 637. The main praying hall of Al-Aqsa Mosque was built, and the Dome of the Rock near the center of the hill, which is considered the oldest, one of the oldest Islamic structures in the world, that marks the spot. And this is also very controversial. In theory, it marks the spot where Muhammad is believed by Muslims to have ascended to heaven. But how is this possible if Muhammad died 5 years earlier? Yes, because Muhammad died in the year 632 of the Common Era, and the Quran does not indicate he ever even went to Jerusalem. So how did they suddenly come up with this whole thing? And here, some people would say, I smell some bullshit. Well, unfortunately, religion has often been used for political, by the political manipulators. So how did they arrive to this conclusion that Muhammad had even, used this site for something as holy as ascending to heaven? Well, the political and strategical implication of taking over this site of worship from the Jews pushed the Muslim scholars of the time to reinterpret the 17th chapter, Surah, of the Quran in their favor. Now, within the 111 verses, the ayat of this Surah, there is the word Isra that refers to the night journey that the Prophet Muhammad, who was having some problems at home and also at Mecca and stuff, arguing with this and this other tribe, they wouldn't let him even into Mecca. At one point, apparently, he was transported. There is this story, this night journey of Muhammad that is found in the Hadith, which is basically the later collections of the reports, teaching, deeds, and sayings of the Prophet, which form supplements to the Quran. Now, two Hadith sources are used for this interpretation. It's very important. I know it might sound boring, but it's very important because this is where the Muslims then, base the fact that this is one of the most holy places, together with Mecca and with Medina. This is, it's like the third most holy place in the whole of Islam. So, two Hadith sources, one of the Isra, which means night journey. The other one is the Miraj, which means ascension. And they are testimonies from two guys who were rather young followers of Muhammad at the time. One is Sanab ibn Malik and the other one is Ibn Abbas. Both are considered companions of the Prophet. Now, companions of the Prophet is basically the disciples of Muhammad. Muhammad didn't have disciples, he had companions. So that is the term. But like I said, they were still young boys at the time of Muhammad's journey, and so it's a little bit controversial, this whole thing. Like I said, the Arabs, the Muslims, entered the holy city of Jerusalem only 5 years after the death of Muhammad. So this is an inconsistency. Now, in the ninth journey, Muhammad is said to have traveled on the back of a burak, a winged animal, suddenly flying to the Alaska, which at this point didn't exist because there was no mosque. But he flied. Maybe, the time doesn't have really the same significance when you are going above, maybe, I don't know. In any case, they believe that he flied with this winged animal to the winged. He had wings. He had wings. Where he led other prophets, including Abraham, Moses, and even Jesus in prayer before he was abducted in the skies. This is basically the story. He then ascended into heaven during what, like we said, is the Mirage, the ascension, where he individually then greeted the prophets and later spoke to God, who agreed to lower the number of required prayers during the day, which were 50 to 5. One must have a life, otherwise, I know that the Muslims pray 5 times a day, maximum respect. The Jews pray 3 times a day, maximum respect. But 50 times a day was a little bit too much. And so apparently he said the number required of Salat, it's no longer 50, but 5. The journey and ascent marked one of the most important dates in the Islamic calendar, the 27th of the Islamic month of Rajab. But, I repeat, the problem is that it never happened, as the Muslims did not conquer Jerusalem for another 5 years. So we have a big inconsistency here. We see that they forced this interpretation so they could take over that holy ground and build their mosques. Now, today's Muslims view the movement for the rebuilding of her temple, of course, very bad. For them, it's a threat to their own mosques and an affront to Islam due to the very presence of the Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, built on the ground of the former Holy Temple. We want to show you an image so you can have a more clear idea of this. Let's see if I can find it here. Of course, this is just an image that can make you explain better where we are today and where we might be tomorrow. But that might create, of course, a very big problem when you have 2 mosques in the way, and the Jews want to rebuild, of course, another temple. So let's move further and explain more about this subject. Here we have, of course. Now, the area, like I said, is regarded by Muslims as the 3rd holiest site in Islam, even if the assumed connection of the Prophet with this place seems false and driven mainly by political interest rather than religion. Having said this, Muslims are resolute in calling for recognition of their exclusive rights over the site. So they want nobody else to even visit the place if you're not Muslim, and demand that it be wholly transferred to Muslim sovereignty. They want the complete control of it. Furthermore, some Muslims go as far as denying any association with the mount to the former Jewish temple which stood at the site, giving birth to their own temple denial movement that claims that the successive temples in Jerusalem either did not exist or they did exist, but they were not constructed on the side of the Temple Mount. And it's a very stupid claim because there is, of course, evidence of it all over the place, at least of the second temple. You have no evidence whatsoever that's been found till this day of the first temple. But the second temple left plenty of evidence. And this claim has been advanced by the very same Palestinian political leaders who control the West Bank, who control Gaza. Religious figures, intellectuals, and authors of the Palestinian world have made this assertion. Now, Isaac Reiter, who is an Israeli political scientist and professor of Islamic, Middle East, and Israel studies, describes the growing tendency of the Islamic authorities to deny the existence of the Jewish temples on the Temple Mount, characterizing it as part of a campaign to increase the status of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount in Islam as part of the effort of turning Jerusalem into a complete Muslim city under Arab governance. Now, it wasn't always under Israeli control. There was a war in August 1967 after the Israeli captured the Mount. Rabbi Shlomo Goren, the chief rabbi of the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, and later chief rabbi of the State of Israel, began organizing public prayers for Jews on the Temple Mount. Rabbi Goren was also well known for his controversial position concerning Jewish sovereignty over the Temple Mount. I mean, when on August 15, 1967, shortly after the Six-Day War, Goren led a group of 50 Jews on the Temple Mount. He even put up a flag on top of that, which was immediately put down by order of his superiors, who said, do you want the whole Middle East to explode? Because, I mean, if we put the flag on top of the Dome of the Rock, I mean, you want us to really have a never-ending war here. So Goren continued, nevertheless, to pray for many years in the Makam building overlooking the Temple Mount, where he conducted yearly high holy day services. His call for the establishment of a synagogue on the Temple Mount has been reiterated also by his brother-in-law, who was the chief rabbi of Haifa. But he was, like I said, criticized by the Israeli Defense Ministry, who called this behavior inappropriate because it was too much to expose yourself like that and to in a situation that is very tense. The episode led the chief rabbis of the time to restate the accepted laws of Judaism that no Jews were allowed on the Mount due to issues of ritual impurity. That's why it also goes with the ritual of the red heifer. No.
That's my input for this show. I just say heifer. Heifer.
No, I want to actually go to read something now, but this is regarding the Western Wall, because you have the Western Wall where people often see. This is, of course, we have seen it last week, the Encyclopedia of Zionism, which I showed you last week. And if you could read this part here, this right first now? Paragraph here, yes.
Okay, Western Wall. Is that Kotel Ma'arabi, also called Wailing Wall, part of the retaining wall that surrounded the Temple Mount in Jerusalem after the extension of the outer courtyard of the temple area of Herod, king of Judea. As the last remnant of the Second Temple, the Western Wall is Judaism's most sacred site and has served for centuries as a place of pilgrimage and prayer. Since the destruction of Jerusalem in CE 70. Jews have made the pilgrimage to the ruins of the temple to bewail its destruction and to offer prayers. Talmudic sages expressed the opinion that the Shekinah, the divine presence, would never depart from the Western Wall and that it would never be destroyed. References of the Western Wall as a place of worship are frequently found from the 11th century on. Special prayers were composed to be recited at the wall. It was a long-established custom for Jews to take off their shoes on approaching it. Since the prayers took the form of lamentations on the destruction of the temple, the wall also came to be called the Wailing Wall.
Perfect. Wailing Wall, which we always see.
Ow, my fingers.
The Wailing Wall, which is always... Now, it's important to understand all this so you can have, of course, a much more clear view of what is happening now. Because, of course, there are several different views amongst Christians about the significance or even the requirement of building a fair temple in Jerusalem. According to the writers, in fact, of the New Testament, the New Covenant is really marked by the dwelling of the people, the Holy Spirit in the believer's body. And every time we gather together, we symbolically bring together the temple. And for this reason, for the Christians, the idea, for certain Christians, not everybody though, the idea of rebuilding a physical fair temple has been superseded in some way, and it's no longer, it's not something you need to do. But there are, however, Protestant dispensationalists, American evangelists in particular, who instead believe in the importance of rebuilding the temple, as well as Freemasons also, that go along with the idea, subject I discussed, by the way, in detail in Confessions of an Illuminati Volume 2. Dispensationalists believe that after a period of severe tribulation of earth, the Lord Jesus Christ will visibly and bodily return to earth, the second coming. And they always believed the sustained future restoration of the nation of Israel was important for this purpose. And that's what we discussed last week also, when the evangelical movement somehow was backing the Zionists in their quest for claiming back the Holy Land, the Promised Land. However, there is also a belief in some parts of the evangelical movement that you will have a rapture of the church. That will happen because people will be suddenly disappearing, and this will happen before a period of tribulation. I personally don't agree with the rapture. I find a very convenient way of escaping the problems that will follow, But of course, everybody is free to believe what they want. It's a belief embraced by many American evangelists, so I respect it. But like I said, I myself personally don't agree with it. Earlier this year, though, and here we arrive to where we are now. And it's very important to explain this because it's relating with what is happening right now in the Middle East. There was talk of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And the Joe Biden administration wanted to basically bring back this idea, which will see a lead of Saudi Arabia, the idea basically of an administrative body, a sort of a body built amongst different Muslim factions, but mostly, let's say, part of the Sunni world after all. I mean, the Wahhabites, but part of the Sunni world. So they refloated this idea of an administrative body that would run the Temple Mount, showing once again the key role of the Temple Mount in the future of the Middle East. Until the Six-Day War, Jordan ruled Judea and Samaria, and the role of Jordan up to this day has always been very important at the Temple Mount. It continued to maintain Muslim custodianship of the Mount even after 1967, alongside the Israeli sovereignty. And even after its 1988 announcement of disengagement from the West Bank in its peace treaty with Israel in 1994, Jordan was granted official status on the Mount, and it was stipulated that Israel respects the present special role of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in Muslim holy shrines in Jerusalem. And that when negotiation of the permanent status will take place, Israel will give high priority to Jordanian historic role in this shrine. So Jordan has a very important role. Jordan has a very important role. Because in reality, Jordan, Palestinian is part of Jordan in a way, the Palestinian, Cisjordanian West Bank, that was also part of Jordan before. So the special relationship with Jordan, including security, intelligence, and joint economic interests, have over the years turned them into the ideal silent partners in keeping the tranquility and security and the management over the Temple Mount for the Muslim world. So the Jordanian have this responsibility. Thus, it was entrusted with the work of also restoring the southern and eastern temple walls after they began to subside. Accordingly, also the Israel acted accordingly, considered to the Jordanian demand not to replace this unstable bridge and all this stuff that basically is built to enter basically the Temple Mount for non-Muslims, because non-Muslims have their own entrance. So they had to build. Okay. Now, Israel has a lot of consideration for Jordan, and of course, there has been arrangements that they have made surrounding the area. The idea of establishment, though, of Biden wanted to bring back this idea of establishing an interfaith Muslim Council Directorate with the Americans, wanted to revive with, and of course, before the recent Hamas-Israel, everybody heard about what was happening also with Israel getting closer to Saudi Arabia. And everything that was discussed was actually based on this deal also that would have given Saudi Arabia senior status on the Temple Mount alongside Jordan, because Saudi Arabia in the 80s, there was some businessmen that they even offered $100 billion cash to Israel if they could put the flag of Saudi Arabia on the Temple Mount. They just told them, we put the flag of Saudi Arabia, we give you $100 billion. Of course, Israel refused that. But what they wanted to create is something that was also extending the privilege that Jordan has also to Morocco, the Palestinian Authority, and perhaps even Turkey. That didn't really go too well with Jordan, who felt, they would be losing their exclusive over that area, because the Kingdom of Jordan survives a lot on the fact that they have the custodianship of those holy sites. It kind of gives them credibility. But also it didn't really go well with Shia Islam, because if you think about it, Morocco is mostly Sunni, Turkey is mostly Sunni, the Palestinian Authority, it's a bit that, but most of the Palestinian Authority is Sunni, while the one that is with Hamas is Shia. So the Shia Islam, which is represented mostly by Iran, at that point felt into they said, okay, we are not going to take this, because it was happening. It was happening. Joe Biden was pushing for it. Saudi Arabia kind of like was about to agree. why not? They will have this privileged status on one of the most holy sites. They already have, their own privileged status with Mecca, Medina, and all that. So finally, they can also extend it to this to Jerusalem. Now, so what happened here? Shia Islam. The Shia Islam is another part of Islam. Islam is divided in various branches, but that the main division happened between the followers of Ali, the cousin of Muhammad, and the followers of the last of the first caliph. So basically, the Shiites have a different way of interpreting Islam. Okay, so this the fact that they didn't see any Shiite representation in this future it wasn't really so much interfaith. It was mostly Sunni Islam, Wahhabits, but there wasn't, and so Iran, of course, backed Hamas. And then, of course, you have the Sino-Russian New World Order interest of Russia and China that are connected to their backing Iran. And I've talked very much about the Sino-Russian New World Order in Volume 7 of my Confessions, which is a book which I suggest you read, as well as also getting, of course, my latest book, which is Volume 9 of my Confessions, which is a very important book to understand where we are now. That's in these 7 steps of the secret of the New World Disorder. And I think that at this point, it's kind of clear where we are, but of course, we should maybe have a look at this, how the Second Temple used to be, because at least it will also make us understand the magnificence of this project. This is, of course, the Second Temple. It's not the Third Temple. It's a virtual reconstruction, but it's going to give us an idea. And I think it's important to have an idea of what this temple really is. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy Zagami. If you want to support our show, you can do it with a donation or by purchasing one of my books. You can find them linked at leozagami.com. I will put now, of course, a GoFundMe here on the screen. Christy, let's thank again the sponsors of today's show who made possible today's show.
Okay, Richard Robinson, Philippe Beller, and Bruce Kodish. Thank you so much for your donations.
Great.
And for everybody that bought the book.
Okay, we were talking about Jordan and Transjordan. Here we have actually the actual voice in the Zionist Encyclopedia. Let's see what they say.
Transjordan, name applied to the area of Palestine east of the Jordan River. Historically, Transjordan, or parts of it, have often been united with Western Palestine. In biblical times, the tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh settled in the mountainous plateau of Gilead, and King David conquered the whole of Transjordan. In the reign of King Solomon, the conquests of David were consolidated, but under his weak successors, most of Transjordan was lost or held only temporarily. It was intermittently conquered and lost by the Maccabees and the Herodian dynasty. From the 5th to the 7th century of the Common Era, Transjordan was under Byzantine authority. In CE 635, it was overrun by Muslims. After a brief interlude, 1115 through 81 of Crusader run by Muslims. After a brief of Crusader rule. I'm sorry, it's getting all confused. Transjordan reverted to Muslim domination, first of the Egyptian Mamelukes and later, 6th century, of the Turks, who administered it as part of the Ottoman Empire.
I think it's important to underline that for those who want to have a more clear idea of why we are in this mess. Welcome to the Leo Zagami Show. We are, of course, trying to explain what's behind the Temple Mount, the Third Temple, the controversy that is inevitably leading us towards also a World War III, because that's what seems to be manifesting in the last few hours. Is becoming more and more clear for everybody that we are unfortunately going towards World War III, and this religious stuff, some people might not even keep it in consideration because in their minds it's too far away from the reality, no? But in reality, this is very important and is central, and even the whole controversy behind the Third Temple is going to be fundamental in the end times. Somebody was, of course, also talking about the Shekinah, which is basically where God dwells, is this concept that we find in Judaism connected to the presence of God, a little bit like when Moses went on Mount Sinai and you had the burning bush, or then you had the cloud, in which he went 2 times there for 40 days, and then he came down with the tablets of the law. Then he had to go back, then he had to break them, then he had to go back up because he saw that the people were worshipping some golden calf, and of course Judaism has had also their own problems that led to the destruction of the first and the second temple, because that is also part of the prophecies. Now, Solomon's temple, the first temple, was created between the 10th and the 6th century before the Common Era. And it was apparently a really magnificent and incredible place. That's why it functions very well also as the main allegory for Freemasons. It is the first temple, and it is specifically described in the Hebrew Bible in the Book of Kings, which includes a very detailed narrative about the construction and by Solomon, which was the penultimate ruler of the United Kingdom of Israel. And of course, then you have also the figure of the high priest of Israel, which, nowadays, of course, after the destruction of the Second Temple, Rabbinic Judaism took over, because you had two factions that were within Judaism, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And these two factions didn't really want to approach Judaism in the same way. The Pharisees were much more traditional. They ended up being the winners and transmitting everything in the Mishnah. But the Sadducees were more closer to Hellenistic values. There is also a very interesting account that is given by Rabbin Marvin Antelman in Volume 2. If you pick up Volume 2 of his Eliminate the Opiate, which is very important because it makes us understand also that the Second Temple was destroyed amongst the controversies surrounding also the various Gnostic sects that unfortunately were not only attempting to infiltrate. They're there. They're just there. No, they're there. To eliminate the opiate. And second.
This? Oh, here.
Here. Okay. Now, in this book in particular, which is Volume 2, there is actually a passage which I would like Christy to read, because it gives us also the idea. And, we have the idea, of course, surrounding the fact that, the Jews were crucifying the Romans. Jesus, by the way, had prophesied the whole thing, the destruction of the temple. But read this passage in particular from... yes, I make it bigger for you. Here we have...
Okay, the rabbis of Israel appreciated full well the dangers of Gnosticism, and during the later days of the Second Temple, because of the murmuring of the Greek Gnostics, Babylonian, Talmud, Rashat 12a, the rabbis changed the daily recitation of the Decalogue in the temple worship, so to that of the Shema, which consists of two sections from the book of Deuteronomy and one section from the book of Numbers. It is recited twice daily in its entirety to this very day in the synagogue. The rabbis instituted the recitation of the Shema as a polemic against Gnosticism. The Gnostics' belief is polytheistic. In the Shema, we read, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Deuteronomy 6:4. In Gnosticism, wisdom is an obsession. All knowledge is considered the ultimate. In the Shema, we read that thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. Ebed 6:5.
Gnostics believe in the mysterious amulets and symbols and inscriptions, but in the Shema, the ultimate inscription is that of the word of the Lord, which is to be written in the holy Tefillin, Mezuzot, and doorpost. Now, the Gnostics believe that the weather was controlled by the princes of light and darkness who created hail and storms. And at this point, I would like to reference, of course, my latest book, which really explains how dangerous these Gnostics heresies have been, also for Christianity, used by the Illuminati, by the Freemasons. You see how dangerous they are. They were considered dangerous by the Jews, not only by the Christian, the fathers of the church considered them very dangerous, but also, you see, this is something that brings us together. It's already, it's something that brings Christians and Jews together. This point here, I think it's a good point here. So here we are trying to move further. Of course, we are almost at the end, but we are still trying to understand more about this situation. I want to these clashes, because inevitably you arrive to this kind of scenes. I mean, scenes that are really ugly happened here on the Temple Mount, there on the Temple Mount, which I find really even hard to see, because these are holy places, regardless of if you are a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim. Behaving in this way is really something that God definitely dislikes. You see, Christy, this is really what you don't want to see happening with the religion. Now, this is something that reminds me of a fight outside a stadium in Italy, or no, when they fight about soccer, or and they have this. I mean,
really sad.
It's sad, and this is a constant violence that, unfortunately. It's really hurting the ones who really believe and who really would like to see these places being something that actually brings us together rather than divides us. Now, we are, of course, reaching the end of the show, but we have still some things to discuss here that I have prepared for you. We have discussed, of course, how the first temple came together with King Solomon, but then it was destroyed. It was destroyed. At that time, there was the siege of Jerusalem, and it was a moment in which this guy by the name I always find very difficult to pronounce. I don't know if even you can pronounce this one, Christy.
Nebuchadnezzar. I'm not very good at the pronunciation.
And of course, at that point, 587 years before the Common Era, the first temple came to an end. The first temple existed on the Temple Mount of Jerusalem, although no remains have ever been found. Most modern scholars at least agree it existed, and probably pieces of it. Then they say that pieces of it were brought around, and even when the second temple was destroyed, some pieces were stolen and brought to Rome, brought to they say even Subiaco in Santa Scholastica. If when you go in, you see those big marble thing that they say that there were pieces that the incredible black marble, big thing that apparently was stolen. So Solomon's temple ended, but what was kept in Solomon's temple is the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, it's really supposed to be one of the most important objects, because it's the object that really was used for connecting to God, and that Moses, in a way, brought to the Jewish people by instructing in the construction of this artifact to be the most sacred relic of the Israelites. Now, of course, there is those who believe that maybe it was brought by Queen Sheba, who was one of the wives of King Solomon, to Ethiopia, and that is kept down there. Then you have the Knights Templars who might have taken it somewhere in France. There is other people who believe it's still kept under the Temple Mount to this day, hidden, and that we can't find it. But the Knights Templars who were operational there and dug for a long time, I'm sure that they found something. And there is actually a testimony that is very interesting that was published only in the early 70s by a gentleman who was this French publisher, but then who knows if this testimony, it was from when they arrested the Knights Templars, when there was the persecution of the Knights Templars, one of them confessed that the Knights Templars had the Ark of the Covenant and that they had replaced, they had put it, they hid it in a church in France. But we don't know if that's... now, the only authority permitted to enter the sanctuary was this high priest of Israel. So let's see how this high priest of Israel was, because the high priest is called the Cohen, the Gadol. Now, that's why the Illuminati, who were always fixated in imitating and trying to imitate Judaism, created...
they imitate everything.
Yes, they created with this guy called Martinez de Pasquali, the elected of Cohen, which basically is like saying the holy priesthood. And of course, how this high priest should be dressed is also quite interesting, because he has a very particular way of dressing. Here we have it. Remember, there was that guy back in the days called Supreme Rockefeller who wanted to be some kind of messianic. He presented.
What happened to Supreme Rockefeller?
Oh no, he wasn't a Rockefeller. He was just a scammer.
What happened to that guy?
I don't know. With the other guy.
He's with that other guy, and they're probably both in jail. So.
Probably both in jail. But he actually put forward an image of this. How you call them? Dress. Parchments. How you call it?
I don't know.
This ritual, and claiming that he was the one that was supposed. I mean, it was all fake, of course. But we were in the very early days of the internet, and there were people making the most outrageous claims. And this Supreme Rockefeller was one of the most outrageous, to tell you the truth. Sadly, somebody from the truth community gave him some credibility. The guy from Illuminati News, who had this website, Illuminati News, this Swedish guy who lives in America, gave him some credibility. And so...
Well, he's not around anymore.
It's not around.
He didn't stand the test of time.
He definitely didn't stand the test.
You stood the test of time.
I stood the test of time. Now, let's go back and check out what we're discussing today, so we can understand once more this whole scene. And here is quite easy to get mess up, and to confuse one thing with the other. So Al-Aqsa is here. This is the whole Temple Mount area, okay, where the temple used to be. Mm-hmm. Now you have the Dome of the Rock here. Wow. Unfortunately, you can't really enter the Dome of the Rock if you're not Muslim. So that's a big problem. Especially for Jews who will like to go there and maybe see if there is some, things that remain from the Second Temple. Then you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is there. Then you have the Western Wall that we discussed just a moment ago when you cited that thing about the Western Wall. Then you have, of course, the West Bank, which is the land which basically in Italy we call Cisjordania, which is in the hands of the Palestinians. And the whole site also considered as Al-Aqsa Mosque, sometimes all here is considered, but the Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, that's how it's called. So this was to clear up a little bit the whole thing. And then I want to show you, of course, and this is something that all of you can do. If you purchase one of my books, you can send an email, and we will show the pic. You can, of course, do the pic in your home. This guy has the whole collection.
Yeah.
This guy has literally the whole collection of Leo Zagami books.
You want me to get Rambo?
He seems to have almost all the books, but strangely enough, he doesn't have volume 1. But he has almost all of them. Okay. He doesn't have your books, but he definitely has all of my books. So it seems quite incredible. Okay. I want to make you listen to one last thing regarding the promise that this guy did, Ben Gvir. We are nearly there. Rambo, what's up? Huh? Did you like today's episode? Try to put some clarity here on this subject.
Itamar Ben-Gvir is no stranger to provocations, but the latest comments made by Israel's national security minister may not bode well for Israeli diplomacy.
I manage my own policy concerning the Temple Mount, not that of the Jordanian government. I went up to the Temple Mount. I will continue to go up to the Temple Mount. With all due respect to Jordan, Israel is an independent country.
Okay, so this is the philosophy, let's say, of those that are called right-wing, between brackets, or Orthodox Jews, who in some way want to regain access to the Temple Mount. Today, I have explained what has happened in the long history of the Temple Mount. It's now up to you to decide where you want to stand. However, it's of course, we respect the belief system of millions of Muslims, but when it comes down to the Temple Mount, it seems to me that, of course, the Jews have been there for a longer period of time, and that their claim maybe is much more valid. However, in the end times, this whole controversy will assume biblical proportions and will eventually bring us to Armageddon, will eventually bring us to the manifestation of the Antichrist as well as the Messiah. So we need to stand and pray here today on Saturday, October 21st. This is really what we need to do, because what is happening, guys, is not good. You just need to go. We have, of course, made an episode based on historical events, but you don't need much. Just can go on Drudge today and see where we are at. So imagine how important is what we have discussed today. So please share this video. Share this video, because it's important to be informed, to understand how we're being manipulated. There is a war, of course, on your mind, a war made of information, is an info war, but we need to find solutions. We need to find solutions, and we need to find the solutions by knowing what has happened before, not committing the same errors, because committing the same errors, it's not something that will bring anything positive to humanity. We need to bring about new paradigms. And today, Christy, really, when I went through the news of the day, because as you know, I also do my news show for my Italian audience, to see this kind of news, it was kind of disturbing. It was kind of disturbing to see that we are 6 steps from World War III. This is what is being said here, and I want to show our audience. Of course, if I manage to open it here.
Who's a Satanist?
Is a Satanist?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. We have always some Satanists that we need to block in the chat, but that's not a problem. Satanist! Vade retro Satana. I would like to see if it's possible to fix this. Just a second.
Oh, they came back.
Yeah, wow, we have a Satanist that has...
oh, you're just so evil, aren't you?
No, well, I mean, of course, there is... some people say, I'm not a Satanist. Well, no, we are actually on the chat just pointing out on somebody who had flooded the whole chat with, but YouTube has automatically got rid of him because it was a spammer who, I guess, in some way was trying to
I've seen
spam
that
a war.
spammer before.
there is. But like I said, we are 6 steps from World War III. People need to understand that this is the time in which the Messiah will show up, because this is the time that he needs to show up to save mankind and also teach a lesson to mankind. We are having a bunch of technical problems of some kind. We have finally managed here. Wow. Finally managed to show you. As you can see, 6 steps from World War III. Israel overreacts. War spreads to Lebanon. Syria and Russia team up. Iran kicks off. UK and US enter the fight. Saudi Arabia forced in.
Wow, you wrote about this in all your books.
Well, of course.
I'm not surprised because you already said it.
I already said it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much for our sponsors who permit this show to make it possible.
Bruce Kodish, Richard Robinson, and Philippe Biller, thank you so much.
And if you want to sponsor the show, you can do it either anonymously or either you can have your name said, like, but you can decide that. Of course, you can decide when you donate.
If you don't want your name mentioned, just put a little note that you want to remain anonymous.
You can donate through GoFundMe. We also have Cash App. If you want the Cash App link, just go on leozagami.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week with the Leo Zagami Show. Leo and Christy, share this video, put like. I hope you appreciate what we're doing here. Okay, we have some Satanists we can block. We can finally block them.
Be gone.
It's gone. We are blocking them. Wow. We must have touched a nerve here if we have all these Satanists infiltrating our chats.
Do they have anything better to do on a Saturday night?
Oh, no, maybe
kill
not.
a cat or something?
Oh God. I hope not. Seems like, well, whatever. Okay, take care.
Bye, everyone. God bless you all. Even the Satanists. God bless you all.
Get a copy of one of my books, and if you want, send us also a photo at Ordo Illuminatorum Universalis. I'm gonna put here the email, so you can send us also. And this is very important because we love to show the photos of the Leo Zagami books. You can photo how they should do these photos, Christy. You have some advice? You always do something?
No, they always do great photos.
around the home, sometimes
Yeah.
with their cats, sometimes with their dogs, sometimes on their own, sometimes with their books,
Sometimes outside.
sometimes
Sometimes
outside.
at the beach. Some Italian guy took a picture of a lady's butt in a thong.
Oh, yes. You want to see
Yeah,
it?
let's see that one. That was
Okay,
interesting.
okay. That is something, guys. This is the most maniac pick of one of our most maniac readers. It's at the beginning, you can't really notice it, but once you go into the pick and you notice something, I'm going to show you. So this is a typical Italian Leo Zagami reader, okay? Now, the guy has the book in between his legs while he's watching this. Huh? This is a very, okay. This is a kind of Italian reader, Italian maniac. It's okay, yeah.
It's a nice booty, so.
It's a nice booty. Yes, it is indeed a nice booty.
Bye, everyone.
Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. From Palm Springs, that's all. We see you next week.